Hello and welcome today. With the impact of the Uber ruling, or with the recent Uber ruling, I wanted to look today at how that might impact on some cleaning businesses, and also IR35 is coming in April. At the time of this recording, is coming in April 2021, and what that means for cleaning business owners as well. So I'm delighted to welcome Clare Dalziel, who is an HR specialist and also qualified in employment law, and she's going to help us to understand more about these two subject matters. So Clare, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go straight in. Could you just explain to me what the Uber ruling is, please?
Yep. So the Uber ruling is around employment status, and the Uber believed that the drivers were self-employed, and the outcome of the tribunal has determined that they're actually workers. So that means that they become entitled to the national minimum wage, national living wage, and also entitled to things like holiday pay and sick pay. So obviously, as a self-employed person, they wouldn't get holiday pay or sick pay. So that's the major difference.
Okay, so for cleaning business owners who use the business model where they have subcontracted cleaners so that they're not on employed status, how can they better understand the criteria to make sure that their cleaners fall under the banner of self-employed and not workers?
Yep. So there's another case that in 2017, which was with Deliveroo, which did the opposite. So one of the big differences between Uber and Deliveroo was Deliveroo can send a substitution, whereas Uber can't. So that's one criteria for determining the employment status, is to check whether or not they can send a substitution. Another one is how the work is controlled. So from Uber, they had to log into an app from the moment they started to be available for work, and then they had no control over where that work came from. So it comes through the app. So Uber had all of the control. So they had no choice. They'd get a job on the app, and therefore they had to do that work. Third test is around the financial risk. So who holds the financial risk? Insurance. So who holds the insurance? And also things like how integrated they are into the company. So that could be they're provided with a uniform. So effectively they're working under your name rather than as a subcontractor. An email address, whether you provide them with equipment. So those four areas really determine the employment status.
Okay, so just to be clear, with employment status, you've got subcontracting, you've got, which is, so you're an independent cleaner. So effectively, you've got your own business, but you're happy to take subcontracted work from a cleaning business owner. You've got employed, where you work directly for a cleaning business, and it's their job to pay your wages, holiday pay, and everything that comes around with that. And just explain what the difference is between employed and worker is then, because obviously that's neither a subcontracted or employee. So what's a worker then?
Yeah, so a worker is where they can't, so they, under the Employment Rights Act, they qualify for some employment rights. So they have no control. They can't send a substitution. They don't take any financial risk. Are probably the three main areas that determine the worker. There is a tool on the HMRC and government website called CEST, CEST, which stands for Client Employment Status for Tax. That helps to determine whether someone is self-employed or employed, but it doesn't cover the worker status. But it does help to, as a starting point, it asks you lots of questions, and depending on how you answer those questions, it tells you whether or not you would qualify as an employee or self-employed. And normally, if somebody was employed directly, so rather than subcontracted, they would be classed as an employee, then it's likely that they're probably a worker. Okay, all right. Okay, well, that's great. Thank you very much for giving us some clarity around that, Claire. And then there's a few things that I find a little bit on the sort of the grey area when it comes to working or having subcontracted cleaners. So, for example, for cleaning business owners who use that business model, what about things like asking for a unique tax reference number, or asking that subcontracted cleaner to do a DBS check? Is it the situation that you can ask, but the subcontracted cleaner can refuse to give that information? Or is it a question of, if you want to work with us on a subcontracted basis, we need to know that information in order for you to partner with us as a subcontracted cleaner? Yeah, so I'll do the DBS check first. So DBS check you can ask, because I'm presuming that they may work with vulnerable people. So therefore, there may be a requirement from the client that you need to have a DBS check. And if that's built into your contract, then there should be no issue with that. With regards to the UTR, I'm not the expert. It's probably more of an accounting question. But normally with the UTR, you would only give that to your accountant, or if you're registered under the CIS scheme, would be two reasons. I suppose it would depend why you're asking for that information, because somebody who completes a self-assessment would have a UTR, so I'm not sure what it would actually tell you. Obviously, if they had a limited company, you would ask for their company number or their T registration. So what's the reason for you that you would ask for the UTR?
So I suppose as a cleaning business owner, what you want to check is the person that you're aligning with as a subcontracted cleaner is genuinely self-employed, in the sense that they then do submit that self-assessment either themselves or through an accountant. So I think it's more of a quality control check. So could it be, rather than actually getting that UTR number, that you could ask, do you are you do you have a UTR, yes or no? And the basis on their response to that is, if they are not then registered as self-employed and running as a self-employed unit, does that mean then that we can't take them on as a subcontracted cleaner? Or is it the risk of the cleaning business owner, or is it at the risk of the subcontracted cleaner if they're then not going down that route?
I think as long as you've done the employment status check and you've confirmed whether or not you're treating them as self-employed or as a worker, you can ask the question. They can decline, because there's no reason why they have to provide you with it. If they're going to work with you on that basis, I would be quite nervous if they don't want to provide it, because that might suggest that they're not registered correctly. But I would also make sure that your contracts are very clear in stating that it's their responsibility to register as self-employed, and they are responsible, as long as you've done the employment status check, that they're responsible for their tax and national insurance. Okay,
so what I'm hearing here, Claire, is that really the secret here is to have a robust contract between yourself and the self-employed subcontracted cleaner, so that your contract clearly states what it is that you expect from your third party contract, because effectively that's what it is. So this is what it is, and by signing that, they've agreed to those terms and conditions. And so what that does is that then takes that responsibility from you as the cleaning business owner to the subcontracted cleaner, because they are their own business. So they do need to understand those responsibilities. And that helps protect you as a cleaning business owner, but it also helps protect the subcontractor as well. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, as I say, as long as you've done the employment status, and so the risk to you is if they are effectively a worker and they're not self-employed. So as long as you've done that check, so really around, making sure it's clear in your contract.
So again, just to make sure that I'm clear on this understanding, if your subcontracted cleaner has not registered as self-employed, effectively they then become a worker. Is that correct?
No. So as long as you're happy that they're not a worker, it's their responsibility to register as self-employed. It's your responsibility if they effectively are a worker. So it would fall back on you if they are really a worker and not self-employed.
Okay, so you need to make sure that they don't fall under the worker status, that they sign a robust contract so that you're protected and they're protected, and make sure that that they are able to either say yes or no to a cleaning job, that they can provide a suitable substitute if for any reason, so they've taken on that particular cleaning job, and for any reason they can't make that cleaning job, they provide a suitable substitute, or they give you enough time for you to get a suitable substitute in. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Great.
Okay, that's great. That's brilliant, because I think it's really important that we understand these fine details, because I think we can get caught up in hearsay and interpretation as well, because we're not HR specialists, that's your job, but as cleaning business owners, there's so many facets to running a business. We can't be skilled in every single element. So it's really great to have this clarity, so that we know that we're following the rules. And certainly people in my community, so the cleaning business owners, they want to do the right thing, and I think we sort of live in fear a bit of asking the questions, because it's like, oh gosh, what if we've been doing it wrong all these years? Oh no. But I think that by having those robust contracts and making sure that using that CTS tool that you either fall under self-employed or employed will give you the guidelines that you need.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then just one more thing that I'd like to ask before we take a look at IR35, if that's okay, Claire. So if you, for example, if you give your subcontracted cleaner guidelines in the form of a digital brochure, so that's like a welcome brochure, and that gives the guidelines of what's expected from them. So for example, when they need to submit their invoices to get paid, how they get paid, how what to expect when they are given a new cleaning contract on a subcontracted basis, how to handle that. So does that fall under the lines of supporting your subcontracted cleaner, or does that fall under the lines of control?
I would say it's not control, because it's just the guidelines of the terms and conditions of your relationship. So as long as you're not, and I presume a lot of that would be around health and safety as well. So obviously got a legal obligation that you need to have provided that information to the subcontractor. So I wouldn't see that as falling under control. It's effectively the terms and conditions of your relationship
Okay, great. So as long as in those guidelines, it doesn't say if you do not turn up to this job, then, we're going to get very cross and, and there'll be consequences to that. It's just making it clear that if for any reason you're not able to commit to that particular cleaning job, you need to either provide a suitable substitute or give us enough notice so that we can put a suitable substitute in. Would that be fair?
Yes, and I think most of what you've just said there would be included in your contract as well. So that's part of just your contractual arrangement.
So your guidelines is basically a reflection of your contract, but just put in a way that's as equally digestible. Okay, and something just came up in my head, then I've lost it. Oh, well, it'll come back later. So that's been incredibly helpful, and I certainly have a better understanding now of employment status and clarity around that. And I think a lot of cleaning business owners are going to feel much more reassured by that, because I think it's quite nerve-wracking when you feel there are these grey areas. So what I'd like to dive into next, Claire, is can you explain to us what is IR35 and what's that going to mean for cleaning businesses?
Yep. So IR35 is all around whether or not people are paying the right tax, and has been used in the past for tax avoidance. So they're not effectively perhaps working under the right the right tax. So there's 3 tests that you have to qualify for, at least 2, which would then mean IR35 would apply. So the first one is your annual turnover has to be more than 10.2 million. Your balance sheet total of more than 5.1 million, or you more than 50 employees. So IR35 really applies to medium to large businesses, and they're determining that a medium business is 50 employees plus.
Okay.
Again, that tool that I mentioned, Assessed, also helps you to understand whether or not IR35 applies. But I would expect that there won't be that many that probably meet at least two of those 3 rules.
Yeah, I think most cleaning businesses operate on that small to medium enterprise, and obviously there are some larger nationals, more I think down the facilities management that would sort of go into that bracket. So fundamentally, unless you've got 50 or more employees plus one or the other 2 criteria, then really we don't need to think about IR35. Our focus in terms of employment is more around the employment status of our cleaners. So if you employ your cleaners, make sure that you've got everything in place, including a robust contract to protect both you and your cleaners.
Yep.
But if you work on a subcontracted model, make sure you've got a robust contract that again protects you and your subcontracted cleaner, to make sure that there's real clarity, so both parties understand how they're working. I remembered that question now, so if it's okay, I'm just going to indulge a bit more of your time. So one of the other things as well is around insurances. So a lot of cleaning business, well, every cleaning business owner, one would hope, has insurance. And if they don't, please get it now, because you need it. That's a minimum criteria. So let's base the assumption that every cleaning business owner has insurance in place. So whether you're a domestic cleaning business owner, a commercial business owner, exterior, or a combination of those, you need to have that insurance. For a subcontracted cleaner, say, for example, if a subcontracted cleaner is going into one of those properties that has been insured by the cleaning business owner, does that subcontracted cleaner also need to get their own insurance, or is it okay for them to be protected by that overall insurance and not fall into employed or worker status?
So as long as your insurance policy covers that, then yeah, you've got to be careful over the insurance, because that could then affect the employment status. Most business owners, I would say, take out some kind of insurance anyway, but a lot of that would come around the control as well. So I would expect that they wouldn't take out their own insurance specifically for necessarily a job, example. But like I say, most business owners would take out some kind of insurance normally.
Okay, so what you're saying then is, as a cleaning business owner, you need to make sure that your insurance covers third-party contractors, which and under that umbrella would come subcontracted cleaners, and maybe if you've got joint ventures, so maybe you've got a subcontracted window cleaner, a subcontracted landscape gardener, or so on. So if your insurance covers third parties, then it's okay for that subcontractor to go in under that umbrella. But as a subcontract, if you are somebody who subcontracts themselves out, it's advisable that you also get your own insurance, but not absolutely necessary to still go in and, say, for example, clean or window clean or landscape that property that's being covered by the overall cleaning business.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm glad I got that clear. Ooh. Okay, so Claire, I want to thank you so much for going through that. I feel actually so much better getting a clearer understanding in layman's terms as to what the Uber ruling has meant in terms of bringing to light employment status for cleaning business owners, what IR35 is all about, and actually for most of the community listening to this, that's actually okay, because most people don't have 50 employees that we work with, and I'm assuming that, I suppose, if you kind of got that 10 million point to turnover, that you've got specialists coming in to help you with that anyway. So
yes, I would hope so.
Fantastic, that's great. Thank you so much for your time, Claire. It's been a pleasure having you on here, and I hope that we can convince you to do more interviews in the future.
I'm glad that you found it helpful.
Very much so.